was talking with one of my relatives about why I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, and the first thing they said was that Thanksgiving suddenly became controversial. And I think there are a few folks who feel that way, so let's talk about it. It was really common to celebrate Thanksgiving, especially in elementary school. The adults would have half the students dress up as pilgrims and the other half dress up as Native Americans, which at the time we still called Indians. The kids dressing as pilgrims would make little hats out of construction paper with big old buckles on the front, and then the kids dressing up as Native Americans would make headdresses out of construction paper, and back then it was just innocent fun. So when did it all become political? Well, I hate to tell you, it's always been political, and it was always problematic and disrespectful. Imagine what it would be like for little children to grow up learning that it's okay to dress up as a characterized stereotype version of your community while reenacting a propagandized twisted narrative of your community's most deep historical trauma. A lot of peoples don't have to imagine that. That's actually still curriculum in a lot of places in the United States. And it's not like we've been celebrating Thanksgiving since the founding of this country. It's something that was invented by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. You know, the war over states' rights to continue doing slavery. In the middle of that, President Abraham Lincoln declared a national day of Thanksgiving to bring the country together over good food, great stories, lies, and propaganda. This created a twisted historical narrative of the original peoples of the United States, welcoming settlers and colonists with open arms while willingly giving up their land, their rights, and their personhood. And that's just not what happened. When Thanksgiving became a holiday, indigenous people did not have the right to citizenship, they did not have the right to vote. They were barely a generation removed from the forced displacement and relocation that historians now call the Trail of Tears. In other words, indigenous people did not have any say in their own lives or in the narratives about their people and their histories. Today, indigenous people continue to be under-resourced, face disproportionately high levels of violence, and land treaties continue to go disregarded in the United States. And today, due to the tireless, relentless, and dedicated advocacy of indigenous communities and organizations, there has been increased awareness and acknowledgement about indigenous people's history and humanity. And accordingly, this increased awareness has helped many people to understand that the history of Thanksgiving is problematic to say the least. Thanksgiving and the way that it's taught is not about celebrating anything real. It's about furthering historical propaganda and false narratives that portray indigenous people as being grateful for all of the violence and harm that they experienced, or worse, bringing it upon themselves, or worse, that they don't even exist anymore, and that's just not true either. And it overshadows the real, lasting, generational harm and violence that was done to indigenous people in the United States. The Wampanoag and Chappaquiddick nations in the northeast of the United States still exist today, despite all of the harm and violence that the Pilgrims perpetrated onto them. And for many of these communities, Thanksgiving isn't a celebration, it's a day of mourning. You can visit the Wampanoag and Chappaquiddick Nation's website to learn more about them, and by going to native-land.ca, you can learn whose land you're on, learn more about the people, and even consider providing reparations. Take an active interest in learning more, and if there are young people in your life, try to interrupt this cycle of propaganda and harm. Collective learning and healing is the way forward, and the only way that's going to happen is if we replace propaganda with the truth.